another episode of Get a Load of This. From the Silver Creek Studios, I'm Jarod.
I am Ryan, and we are fucking fired up. Jarod and I are going to fight.
We are ready to throw down.
I don't think we're going to fight. But,
and it's almost Thanksgiving. We should be thankful for each other and our friendship and camaraderie. Fuck that.
Yeah. No, this all starts. I mean, this is a good topical. I'll try to introduce this. That this is November. We neglected to mention it. We were talking about Veterans Day on our previous episode, but I hope that everybody out there is familiar with Movember. It used to be, I don't know if it still is, maybe Mustache Movember, and where gentlemen, and maybe ladies, are encouraged to grow out their mustache in support of
grow it if you can.
Whatever you got, to raise awareness for prostate cancer. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a valid and viable cause. And it's, I think, in a bit of reaction to Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October. So November is let's focus on the guys for a little bit. Doesn't get quite as much attention. The NFL, I don't think they wear baby blue socks or anything like that. Maybe they should.
Right.
Some people argue that the NFL was just profiteering off of the cancer awareness stuff, and they were selling pink, towels and with the NFL shield on it. But anywho,
I did ask you though, where do you weigh in on testing? How do you feel about breast cancer and prostate cancer testing?
Before we get into that,
all right,
let me go down this little path, and you can disagree with me all you want, but it is Thanksgiving is upon us. It's a time to enjoy your family and to be thankful for those that you're surrounded with. Hopefully, you're surrounded with those people for extended period of time, as long as you possibly can be.
I
so
see
you
where
see
you're
where I'm going
with
with this.
Yep.
So I would encourage every man in your life and every woman and every man in your life, go encourage them if they're over 40 years old to be aware of men's health and be aware of the possibilities of prostate and testicular cancer. Just as well as you should encourage the women in your life to be aware of breast cancer and ovarian and other things that affect women only. That's just, in my humble opinion, that is just good practice. Jarod, we've already pondered this. We've already kind of,
that's why we're fired up.
Yeah, a little bit. And Jared's question is, where do I stand on testing? So, I think that every woman over a certain age, if it's 40, should have a mammogram, regularly, whether it's a year or every 2 years, whatever it is. I think that if you're a younger woman and you have a propensity, if it's a historic family history, or if you have, I've heard the term dense breasts, that there's a higher likelihood that you could develop a tumor, that you should have it at a younger age and maybe more frequently. And you should also do the self-exams and all that stuff. I think that the same thing, well, I don't know if a lot of guys have dense prostates or dense testicles, but I think that men should follow those same rules as it pertains to the parts of the anatomy that are unique to men. So, I think that after a certain age, you should go to your doctor regularly and have a finger stuck in your butt. Simple as that.
Well, the counterpoint to that, and I'm not saying that I wholeheartedly believe this or that it's definitive or anything, but there have been studies that have shown and arguments have been made that people who get mammograms or prostate exams are not less likely to be affected by breast cancer or prostate cancer, to let's say die from it.
Okay.
So the whole argument is early detection, right? That's why you would get this test done, so that you can detect it at an early stage and head it off at the pass, so to speak.
Okay.
So some studies have shown that it doesn't help all that much.
Okay.
The early detection just means you're going to be aware of it sooner. You're maybe going to start treating it sooner, but
you're more likely to live through it.
Well, the argument is that, but it's not affecting the outcome of the treatments. Just because you caught it a little sooner doesn't mean it's going to advance.
I would disagree with that.
I mean, I'm just saying what I've seen.
I hear you, and I'm not disparaging what your observations are. What I would say is, well, let me tackle the first thing first. That the studies, the studies show that folks that get tested regularly, it does not increase their chances or decrease their chances of developing cancer or identifying it or whatever. That's a bogus. Any study that's based on that is a bogus study, because what they need to be studying is, of those people that got tested and that detection of this disease was identified at stage A, B, C, or whatever. If they hadn't got tested, let's say, how quickly would their demise have been upon us? To take the blanket, like, okay, 90% of men, I'm just throwing numbers. I have no idea if these are factual. 90% of men have a prostate exam after their 40th birthday. They go to their doctor. If they go to their doctor regularly, they go in, and it's standard protocol. That doctor says, okay, bend over, and bada bing, bada boom, right? So if you take that entire population, so that's not a good study, because the majority of men, period, don't get prostate cancer. But you never know. Cancer strikes.
Well, I'm not saying whether you'll get it or not. I'm saying of the people who get tested regularly, and the people who don't get tested regularly, those who come down with prostate cancer are, I think the studies are saying that the percentage of people who it progresses to a level that they have to get treatment and whatever, or die from it, is not affected by, it's the same. So if you got tested and you end up getting prostate cancer, it's going to develop to whatever, and you're going to treat it, and it's either going to get worse or it's going to get better. And then if you didn't get tested and you get prostate cancer and you find out about it, and it's going to develop and you're going to treat it and it's going to get better or it's going to get worse, that it doesn't matter, is what some of these studies are saying.
I hear you.
So that's all I'm saying, is it has nothing to do with
I think that's,
who gets it, who doesn't, how.
Fine, yeah. So
same with mammograms.
My take on that would be, then, by choosing not to, you're making a decision of, I just rather not know and not have to deal with it until the imminent is upon me, until basically, it's too late. We're at the end stages. I would take my chances with, again, based on these studies who are implying that maybe this is an option, is that I would take my chances with not getting it, because I think that's the biggest chance, is you're not going to get prostate cancer at all. Well, yeah, I would say statistically, your odds as a male human, the odds are
I'll
in
take
your favor.
my chances with not getting it, period.
It's less than 50% people that get prostate cancer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if I do, I'll treat it when I find out about it, versus I'm going to spend the next 45 years of my life having a finger up my ass every year to decide or to determine whether I might have it.
Well, I'll tell you this.
I will take my chances.
Well, so
same with mammograms. I mean, that's the argument against, is it's an embarrassing thing. It's a stressful thing. It's a painful thing.
That doctor's seen a lot of assholes.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether they care. It's, do you care? Do you want to bend over or stand on a platform?
Did you have a
with
vasectomy?
your boobs hanging out? And I did, yeah.
Okay. Was that embarrassing?
Sure.
But you did it.
Yeah, but it's because I never want to have kids again.
But my point is that these are doctors. They've seen far worse than what you've got to offer. But it still doesn't matter. Whatever situation you're in, even if the person who you're experiencing with has been there, done that, it's still embarrassing. Well, sure, but
you can tell yourself all you want.
There's no getting away from that. It's embarrassing. But my point that I would make is that, in my opinion, and I think I'm in the majority, that it's worth it. It's worth that. Early detection is worth it. I worked with a young lady who, and we're talking breast versus prostate here or whatever, but she was in her early 20s. when she was doing a self-exam, I believe, I hope I'm telling the story right, and she felt something, and she felt a tumor, and she went to her OBGYN, and she had scheduled a mammogram. They did the mammogram, and it was cancer.
Right.
And they were able, fortunately for her, it was very early detection, and they were able to go in, remove the mass, and she's been cancer-free for several years now. It was like 6 or 7 years now. Now, if she had not done that self-exam and then followed up with going to her OBGYN and having it tested and having the mammogram, and just said, it'll probably go away. It's just a weird lump. I'm just, whatever.
Right.
Then by the time she was 30, that mass could have grown to, and it could have metastasized, and cancer could have spread to her colon or spleen or.
And I think that's one of the arguments is that, you should be doing self-exams. You should be checking your breasts as a woman to feel around and see. And if you notice something, go get it checked out. But this notion of like, you should smash your tits into this machine and have it zapped, and it's very painful and again, embarrassing and whatever. That if that's not really helping your odds of beating this, and that's the issue. That's the question. Is it? So if I could definitively say that it's not helping your odds, I mean, if there was factual evidence and everyone believed it, that it didn't help your chances at all to get tested, no one would get tested. Why would you? Why would you spend the money and the time and the pain doing it if it didn't help? Right. Obviously, if it helps, if significantly, there's this big factor of everyone that gets tested and finds it early gets cured or whatever, whatever, then you would for sure do that. And that's my point is, there is some doubt, I think, as to whether or not it's for sure beneficial. As per usual, I don't know, so
we need to do more research.
Right, we do.
I think it's interesting. It would be interesting for me to read anything about a study that proposes that it's a. I'm paraphrasing here, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that it's a waste of time to have your prostate checked or have a mammogram. Any study that says that, I would question the people that sanction that study, because, I mean, just intuition tells me that it's a good idea to have things checked out. But, not gonna shit on anything that anybody's doing out there.
But I would also say, how many people do you know that had an exam, found something at an early stage, had treatment on their prostate, and got rid of whatever it was, and they're A-okay now?
I know zero. I know zero.
I know
people.
no one who's had that happen to them. I'm trying to think offhand. Do I know anybody that's had prostate cancer?
I don't know anybody that's had prostate cancer. But here's the best I can do at the other side of that argument. I have known several people that are now no longer with us that had cancers of nothing specific to the male or female,
lymphoma or whatever.
Well, one was esophagus cancer. Another one was a gallbladder. We don't know really where it started, but gallbladder is where it kind of manifested at worst. That there was zero detection, and it was way, way late, stage 4 shit before it was discovered. And if that had been discovered in either of these individuals at a much earlier age, and I don't know how it could have been or how it would have been. We'll never know, right? Because they're not here to ask. All right, so did you ever feel something not quite right? Did you ever have problems swallowing? Did you ever have problems peeing? For the gallbladder person, even though peeing isn't gallbladder, it's the bladder, not the gallbladder, but whatever. So we'll never be able to answer those questions. But I would like to think, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but if there was a way to detect all of those things early, that if we had to do over again, they would go back and do that, and they would find that early, and they would zap it with radiation and go through the chemo or whatever it took to rectify that problem so that they could prolong their life. I think that with prostate cancer and breast cancer, we do have the means to monitor those things and detect them at the earliest stage possible. And if it does cause some slight discomfort or immense discomfort for men or women,
I think for most of my life, I've thought that and agreed with that and said, yeah, that sucks. I don't want to turn 40 or 50 or whenever, they start recommending that. But that's something you're going to have to do, that kind of thing. You deal with it. You live with it. It's a reality of getting older and taking care of your body and figuring out,
Right.
that's all fine. But if it's not true that helps or that changes your odds of beating this disease, then no, I don't want to do that. So I'm only doing it if it for sure helps. And
well, there's no for
and I'm
sure
not saying
anything.
I'm not saying I already believe that it doesn't, and I will never get a prostate exam. I'm not saying that, but I'm gonna do some more research before I go have somebody's finger up my ass, for no reason maybe. Or
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I had mine was probably, it was way before my 40th birthday. I was in my 30s. I wouldn't say it was like 35 or 36, and this is gross. I'll try to keep it as clean as possible. But but I had some issues. Just going to the restroom. I had noticed some blood. And I was like, that's not fucking normal. That seems problematic.
Yep.
So I called the doctor. And I said, hey, this is what's going on. And yeah, come on in and we'll talk about it. And the first thing, completely I had no indication that I was going to get violated in this manner on that day. And it happened. And I was like, this was completely unpleasant. And I don't ever want to do it again. But his concerns were valid. It was nothing. It ended up being just a superficial hemorrhoid inside of my person, and it rectified itself, and took care of it, right? And haven't had an issue since. So, but I did have an upper and lower endoscopy when they stick the camera up you and they stick the camera down you. Hopefully, it's a different camera, all that kind of good stuff, right? So, and hopefully they do one in before the other,
right?
But I did all that stuff, and it ended up being a non-issue. And I'm glad I did, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have the peace of mind to say, all right, it's not a big deal. And if it were to ever happen again, I would probably go back to the doctor and say, hey, I know last time it was just a superficial hemorrhoid, but I just, I'm 43 years old now.
Right.
I'm a whole different human at this point. And I would go down that same path, as uncomfortable as it is, because I want to live as long as I possibly can, and I want to detect these things as early as I can. So I'm one of the few 43-year-old, I was one of the few 37-year-olds that I knew that had ever had that, had an exam done. And it was, it's fucking violating. But, as I said, well, they've seen worse. That dude's had his finger up a lot of assholes. Unfortunately for him.
Like I said, if it
marks
was
against the medical profession.
If I was convinced definitively that was the best way to head it off and figure this out and get it treated early, and that's going to save your life, then yeah, you just do it. And like I said, I think I used to think that, and maybe I still do. I'm not convinced one way or the other, but if there's some doubt that it actually does any good, then I'd like to know more about that.
Have you seen definitive evidence that bacon results in high cholesterol? I'm going to answer for you. No, you haven't.
No.
Have you seen definitive evidence, and we've seen strong evidence, but definitive evidence that smoking will result in smoking cigarettes or cigars or whatever will result in lung cancer? Not definitive. It's definitely a cause. It's definitely a potential cause, right? But it's not. I don't think there's any definitive like, if you do this, this will happen. Because George Burns, let's take him for example. The dude lived to be 100 plus years old, smoked a cigar constantly. Okay, so but because there's not definitive evidence, you still don't smoke because there's a risk involved, right?
Right.
So that risk is similar. You see the lines I'm drawing here, right?
Yeah. Nothing's definitive. There is a risk.
Science is never solved. Science is never certain, and that's kind of, that's one of the arguments about global warming is that if science, the entire idea of it is that there's always someone out there trying to prove or disprove the hypothesis, right? So whenever people say it's settled science, well, that's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as settled science because there's always more evidence. This has turned into a fucking nerdcast, but and I'm not a scientist. I'm a finance guy. But
you did sleep at a Holiday Inn last night.
I did, yeah. No, but I do read a lot, and I like to think that I have a pretty good grasp on these things. But it's just one man's opinion.
Right. And like I said, I'm no scientist either. I haven't done tons of research. I have read a couple of studies that have shown this idea that I'm presenting. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
well, I'm going to try. We're going to go down another path.
Yeah, we are.
So I also asked you how frequently. You recently went to the doctor.
I did. Yeah.
And,
at some point, I can't remember when you had mentioned it, but we kind of talked about just regular checkups.
Right.
And whether we do that. So I don't. No one in my family goes for regular checkups. We don't go to the doctor unless
you don't do your annual visit.
Right. No, we don't go unless we need to. Unless there's an issue that,
Do you go to the eye doctor?
Yeah. I mean, for contacts and stuff.
Do you every 6 months? Every year?
Every year.
Every year you go to the eye doctor. So that's a standard.
Sometimes less often.
It's a standard checkup.
It's generally to get more contacts. You can't get more contacts without an eye exam. So yes, we just do that.
But you go through the motions where they take a picture of your eyeball and they make sure you don't have macular degeneration, all that good stuff.
But I wouldn't do that if I wasn't trying to get more contacts. Yeah.
Well, it's also non-invasive. It's pretty simple stuff.
Though he did stick his finger up my ass once, which was really weird.
That's odd. That's the best way to get a look at the back of the eyeball to see if they got that glaucoma or something going on. No, so
yeah, but yeah, we don't. The only time we go to the doctor is if there's a problem, and it has to be not major. But I mean, we don't go for a cold, or we don't go for a fever. Better be fucking high and long before we would go see the doctor about it. That kind of thing. Where some people go if they're got the sniffles, they go see the doctor.
Well, I believe there's a balance there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go if I have the sniffles. I don't send my kids if they have the sniffles. I don't, but, and I just certainly would go to see a doctor, or I would at least call the exchange number to say, hey, my kid's got 102 fever. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Can you prescribe me something real quick and I can run up to Walmart and pick it up? I would go down that path. Yeah, there's people that are overly alarmed and they go to the urgent care or go to the doctor for every little thing.
Yeah.
That's a problem too. That's part of the problem with America's healthcare system. But the other side of that, I think, some would argue equally the same problem is that those that ignore everything and don't ever have a checkup until it's too late, and then I'm not saying you, I'm saying people that don't take care of themselves.
They have a serious problem that costs a lot,
right? And they don't have the insurance to cover it. Yeah,
I can see that.
And it becomes a burden on the system because now, or on not the system, but on the insurance, programs, and it could have been rectified sooner.
Yeah,
it could have been addressed much sooner. So I forget where I was going with that, but there's a balance. There's a balance. So my company, for example, and the previous company that got bought, they both encouraged. I forget what they call it, but they basically take your blood and they do a whole workup on you and say, all right, your cholesterol's this, and we see that you're a tobacco user, and your blood pressure was this, and they do all of these things, and they say, all right, you need to work on these things. There's a reason why they do it. So the insurance company can make a really clear picture of the risk factors within the population of the people that they're insuring. I did it every year. Number one, because I got a discount on my insurance. But number two, because it's a good idea that they're going to identify. They were the first ones to identify my cholesterol was high, and made me go to they didn't make me, but it encouraged me to go to the doctor and have that addressed. There's a reason why these insurance companies do this, and that is, and it's certainly not settled science, but it's good practice to go and have those regular checkups. Because if you wait until you have a hard time breathing, or until you have a pain in your chest, or whatever, numbness in your legs, that's bad news then. But if you go and they say, your heart rate is elevated because your heart's working this much harder to pump blood because you have this much plaque in your veins because you have had high cholesterol for 20 years. That's why you go get the blood work done and you have the checkups done. So I'm probably not going to convince you to go get regular checkups.
No, you're not going to convince me to get regular checkups. Maybe a little more often than we do. my family has had a history of various
Well, yeah, I asked you about that. Yeah, it's like your father has had strokes and a heart attack.
Right.
They had a bypass?
He did have bypass surgery. He smokes, and his doctors, who at the time when he had 2 heart attacks and a stroke over the course of about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
His doctors essentially said the main cause of that was his smoking. And, they said, if there's anything you want to do to try to prevent this, stop smoking.
Right.
The stuff that's in cigarettes causes reactions in your blood and in your veins to where that stuff starts sticking in your arteries and causes the coagulation and the blockage and whatever. And they said pretty much it's smoking. So it's not bacon grease, it's not fried eggs, it's not this or that.
Well, I go back to my George Burns example.
Yeah.
So that guy smoked a lot.
Right.
There's been a lot of people that smoked for their entire life into their hundreds and had no issues. So I guess
So I'm saying even though he had this issue, I don't feel like I'm necessarily going to have that issue because I don't smoke. Though it's possible. Like I said, my brother has had high cholesterol and...
Does he smoke?
No.
Has he ever?
But at the time he was diagnosed with this, he was significantly overweight, ate very poorly, drank a lot. I mean, he was just living that single lifestyle living the dream, so to speak, but it caught up with him. So, I'm not the healthiest person in the world as far as what I eat and drink, but I try to manage it, and my wife makes me manage it more than I normally would. So I feel like I'm doing my part. I could do better, but I don't want to be on a pill the rest of my life. I don't want to be on medication to treat that just so I can keep eating cheeseburgers.
Does. I was in denial of that. I had, and I take today, I take a pill for gout. Mm-hmm. So people think, oh, gout, that's a fat guy disease. That's and that's the genuine general consensus on it is like, oh, guys that are overweight and that eat too much and fatty diets or whatever. And I am a little bit overweight, but I'm not grossly overweight. No. And the first time I got it was like 13, 14 years ago. And it's just I don't know if it's a genetic thing, but my body makes more of uric acid, which causes crystallization. It's arthritis is all it is. It's arthritis in the lower extremities, in my toes and my ankles and shit. So a doctor prescribed a pill, said, take this every day. You won't have that problem anymore. I said, great. I took the pill every day. Didn't have a problem for a long time. Got sick of taking pills. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to take any more pills anymore. I'm just going to take care of this naturally. Yeah. I stopped taking the pills. And I was drug-free. I took no drugs because that was what my mind told me to do. And then a year later or whatever it was, I had a gout attack. And I was like, this sucks. And I went back. I was like, all right, I'm not to be trusted. I thought I could handle this with eating better and not drinking beer and not eating seafood and all the things that I'm not supposed to do. I can't be trusted. Give me my drugs back. Yeah. And now I take that pill every day. Yeah. And I will for the rest of my life. There's no getting around it. Unless somehow I have a revelation, I start working out and stop eating cheeseburgers and drinking beer.
And part of our issue, our family's issue with all that is, I think doctors are too quick to prescribe medication.
Some are, yes.
And insurance companies are more than willing to pay for it, and the pharmaceuticals are more than willing to keep pumping it out.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And but there's side effects to everything.
Yep.
You're putting these chemicals in your body to cause one reaction, which is inevitably going to affect something else. They aren't quite good enough yet at targeting just that one thing that they're trying to get rid of.
Well, I think they're pretty good at it, though, Jarod.
They are, but I mean,
if you're taking some experimental drug, if you're taking something that's advertised on TV, it's like may cause anal seepage. I would, in order to fix, your
but they
blurry
all say
vision.
That. They all say may cause this, may cause that. And
that's because the lawyers got involved, and they said, we had one person in the trial that their butthole leaked.
I think it's naive. It's naive to think that you can ingest something into your body that's going to cause an effect that you hope is a positive effect and not also have some other effect. Like that, I think it's just naive to assume that we've got it all figured out, or we just know exactly how to target that one thing that's wrong with you.
I would argue,
especially long term. I mean, if you're talking, I need to take this antibiotic for a week and then I'm done. But if you're talking for the rest of my life, I'm going to put this chemical in my body to treat the gout that I have. Like, what the hell else is that going to do over the next 30, 40 years?
Well, number one, they give you a pamphlet that tells you all those things that it caused in trials and by law. I mean, if you trust the FDA, which is a whole nother conversation, if you trust the U.S. FDA or whoever, and you do your research, then you know what the potential risks are. So then you weigh those options, right? So do I want to walk around with a limp for the rest of my life because my ankle hurts, or do I want to deal with the potential for I don't know, being tired?
Yeah, well, and
or whatever, whatever the result may be. I mean,
or whatever pancreatic cancer that this drug causes, 10 years later.
But if that was documented, if that was documented, right?
That's the whole thing. If you knew definitively that this wasn't gonna, that this would save you from prostate cancer, you would get the test. If you knew definitively that this drug was going to cause pancreatic cancer, you wouldn't take it. But
so my oldest boy made a statement today. This is kind of off the topic, but we were talking about making choices and direction in life. And I said, well, what if he's thinking about changing his major, changing his degree program at college, and he's not even a semester in. And I said, well, look, man, if you do this now, 20 years from now, you may regret and look back and say, like, man, I really wish I would have just stuck with the path I originally headed down. And I said, are you going to regret that? I said, look, whenever I was 18 years old, my original degree program was broadcast communications. I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to go into the radio business. And I had a professor say, anybody that wants to do that's foolish because there's no money in it. You're going to work on a 4-watt station in Paducah, Kentucky, and you're not going to make enough money to live off of. Don't do it. And everybody dropped the class. Not everybody.
Look at you now.
Yeah, look at me now. I'm, making $0 on
5 watts.
1.21 gigawatts. And so I use this logic with him, and he had one of the most adult, mature responses that I've heard out of him, and I'm proud of him for having it because it made good sense.
Fuck off, Dad.
Something along those lines. But he said, he goes, well, throughout my life, there's going to be a lot of things that I'm just not going to know about. And he goes, if this is one of those things, then I'm willing to take that risk. And I'm like, hey, man, that's a kind of a good, there's so many unknowns in life.
Yeah.
So you do have to weigh the pros and cons of each of those unknowns. So it brings me back at least to this: do I or do I not treat my symptoms? Do I not resolve this problem that is causing me discomfort? You have to weigh those choices. If I do not, and I choose to not take a pill that reduces my gout symptoms because of my concern that in the pamphlet it says that I could have purple pee or or whatever, right? Or it could increase the chances of prostate cancer. Well, I have to weigh those choices at that point. And I think those are the choices in life. So if I choose to say, no, I'm not willing to take that risk, then I'm just going to limp for the rest of my life. Well, that's certainly
the other
your
choice is I'm going to stop drinking beer and eating cheeseburgers or whatever.
Well, certainly.
And get healthy and not limp.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the other choice.
Yeah, there's multiple options.
Which
there's certainly,
I fully admit would be very tough to do. Like, that's not a choice I would want to make.
I've watched you consume 18 cheeseburgers in one sitting.
It might have been 16. I don't know.
Well, I beat you. I ate more than you.
Yeah. I ran out. I could have kept going. So we kind of keep leading up to this. I know this is the real controversial topic.
I'm going to let you. I'll let you broach the topic because I don't want to call you out on it.
No, that's okay. And I think you asked me. So, did you get your kids vaccinated? And my answer was yes, we did. We didn't really want to, and this was 16 years ago or whatever. Which was a different time in how people reacted to all that. I think if we were going to do it now, I don't think we would. If we had the choice, I think our schools require it, I believe. Maybe you can fight it and put in some kind of protest or whatever. But generally, to enroll your kid at the public school, you have to have your vaccinations. So like I said, I think that we wouldn't.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so obviously, I think most people are aware of the debate on whether or not vaccinations lead to autism.
Well, that's
the general.
That's the most common path. But
there's other issues.
Vaccinations
that
lead to X malady, whatever that may be.
So my argument would be, I have not studied this thoroughly. I've only read a few articles or whatever, and I've looked into it enough.
We know you've done your research.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So,
enough to write a 3-page paper.
Yeah. I don't know what goes into every vaccination that we would be discussing. So
sure.
I don't feel like it's one chemical. I think it's a concoction of multiple things that go into this injection. And I think, you're doing this to a kid at a developmental age when their body and their brain are clearly on the fast track of development.
And at a vulnerable state. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, why would you inject your baby, your kid, your child with something that you think is preventing whatever illness, disease, but who knows what else it could be doing to that kid? Now, am I saying it for sure causes autism or something else? No, I don't know that, but I for sure don't know that it doesn't. So that's absolutely not a risk I'm willing to take.
So you're contradicting yourself a little bit, because you're saying that I won't do this until there's definitive evidence that it solves the problem. But I won't so you won't get the check of your prostate until there's definitive evidence that it's going to solve the problem, which is impossible.
In the case of these vaccinations, there's pretty much definitive evidence that it solves polio or whatever else you're treating. Right.
Yeah. We don't have polio anymore. We don't have smallpox. We don't have scarlet fever.
Exactly, and that's part of my point. Now, if you extrapolate this out and everyone stops getting vaccinations, is polio going to come back? Is scarlet fever going to come back? Is, whatever going to come back?
I believe I've seen in the news that there are cases of this in third world countries and stuff.
Right.
But it certainly could. One dude travels over there and coughs on a kid, or a kid coughs on him. But I feel
like you would just... I think we would... I don't know this. I think we would be better at treating those illnesses and diseases now.
These were plagues, Jared.
I know.
These were plagues.
It was a different time. We didn't have the little blue pill.
Yeah, well...
So, but that's the thing. I mean, especially right now in an environment where nobody has polio, if I don't get my kid vaccinated for polio, is he going to come down with polio? Is he going to give your kid polio?
No. But if it becomes common practice, and that dude goes to Thailand and gets coughed on by the kid with polio, and then he flies back to New York and he gets on a subway, and now nobody's vaccinating their kids because they're worried about autism, which may or may not be true, because there's no definitive evidence that points to that. There's speculation, certainly. Right. So, and then now, and he goes home and hugs his kid and says, "Good night, son," and kisses him on the forehead.
Yeah.
Now that kid goes to school. I mean, look, this is a bad movie. This is a bad plague movie. This is
yep.
So that's how it happens. So I want my kid to be inoculated for that, for all of those things. Now, is there? I think with anything, there's certain risks, right? But there's risks that come with everything, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying about TJ. It's like, you're never going to know. But we have mitigated these diseases, these plagues that have affected the human race over the centuries.
Sure. At what cost, though? I mean, and at the risk of creating brain deficiencies or not,
but that's arguable as well. It's not definitive.
No, absolutely. And I admit that. I don't know that this is absolutely what happens if you take vaccinations. I just think it's silly we're both ingesting beer right now. We're drinking beer.
This is proven to be the
natural
cause of
products that affect, that
and
do
the solution
what? They affect your brain.
Right.
This beverage has natural ingredients in it that affect your brain.
Right.
Why would you think that when you ingest something into your developing baby that it's not going to affect their brain?
Well, that's why we trust medicine. And let's just take the FDA out of it. Let's take the European Drug Commission. Let's take any government entity out of it, and let's just trust science and the medical doctors, right? The Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath is the first do no harm, right? So if we're trusting these doctors, if they are on the up and up, to make sure that they are developing a drug or a vaccination that is going to inoculate a child or an adult from some malady, then that's why we take it.
I would love to trust them, and in general, I think that I do. But I mean, the dollar is the all-powerful bottom line, and if they can sell more vaccinations or convince everybody that you need to do this, and honestly, I think part of the problem in our country and in a lot of countries is the doctors are taught that. They're from a very early age, everybody's brought up that way. This is a multi-generational thing where I don't think doctors are maliciously saying, you know what, this doesn't do anything, but we're going to give it to him because it gives us some money. I don't think that's what's going on.
Those are called chiropractors.
Yeah. But I do think there are the companies that are providing that medicine who are convincing these doctors that this will help this and has no adverse effects or whatever. This doctor with a clear conscience prescribes something that we know this doesn't cause anything.
Well, I mean, look,
they don't know, but the fucking company's making it know.
Well, the opioid epidemic is a result of exactly that, of the drug companies saying this will solve this problem.
Right.
Doctors, feel free to prescribe this. And what they failed to evaluate was the long-term effects of taking a heroin
if they didn't know,
derivative.
It takes 20 years to realize, oh shit, that stuff we were injecting in everybody all this time causes this later on.
Well, and so there's was it HPVA? Is that the human papillomavirus? That there's a
HPV or
something
HPV
like that,
or whatever.
Yeah. But there's one of those vaccinations that. And I don't go to the doctor with my kids. I go when they break a bone, and I go to the orthopedic guy, and is it looking good? Can he throw a baseball? I go to that.
Right.
But my wife takes them to their annual visits and goes and does all the shots. And she has told me that they don't get the HPPV or HPVA, whatever that shot is, because it is still relatively new, and there is some doubts as to its effectiveness.
Right.
Furthermore, I've heard of no rampant cases of human papillomavirus. Maybe I'm wrong. Write in, tell us about it.
Right.
But I'm like, all right, fair enough. But as long as they're getting the standard set, that has been given to children since the 1930s. Then I'm down with that. I'm completely good with that, because and if the result is that if given to an infant, a 6-month-old child, if there was some rampant cases of these kids that are getting this vaccination, because let's take a percentage, 95%, even if it's 85% of 6-month-old babies in the United States are getting the same vaccinations. We don't see 85% of kids having developmental issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think you brought it up earlier, maybe off the air, that there's I think, in my view, and this is without any research, I think you would agree, there's been an increase in diagnosed cases of autism and whatever any kind of development issues.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that perhaps instead of it actually being an increase in cases, it's an increase in diagnosis, where they're saying what used to just be considered this is now autism, or maybe people are looking for something to call.
Well, they're looking for
whatever.
They're looking for an explanation as to why. They're looking for normalcy. They're looking for the textbook. This is what Dr. Spock says my child's supposed to look like.
So the implication being that it's always been this way. We're just calling it autism more now.
I think people look for a scapegoat. Now, I need to clarify this. And did we talk about this before we hit the go button?
I think it was before, yeah.
Okay. Apologies if we're being redundant here, but
or long-winded.
Yeah, I tend to do that. Man, I got the belches.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So, there are cases of extreme autism.
Right. And
there are cases of moderate. I mean, and obviously there is a spectrum of autism. There's no doubt about it. So I think the problem I have is that I have known people, former colleagues of mine, who. So, this woman had a son. He was her second child. Her daughter, I think they were about 4 years apart. Her daughter was, normal little girl,
Mm-hmm.
acted as expected,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great. Everything was wonderful. Second child comes along. It's a little boy, 4 years later, and little boy, developing normally, gets to be about 2 years old. Terrible twos kick in. He's mobile, and he becomes a little boy. And how do little boys act? They're a little bit rambunctious. They're a little bit mischievous sometimes. Sometimes they're not. I mean, I think your son was not. He was pretty low key. You know, my oldest was not, but my second was. He was a hellion and is, and so they're all different. Right. This woman, who I like her, she's a nice person, but she told me, I sat right next to her. She told me about the multiple visits to multiple doctors. Someone called that doctor shopping. To try to find a doctor that would diagnose her child with autism, because she had it in her mind that he had a problem because he wasn't acting like his sister was.
Right.
And I have a huge problem with that because they're different people.
Right.
Even if they're a boy and a boy or a girl and a girl, that you can't expect, like, well, this one's not acting like that one, so there must be something wrong with that one. I want that one to act like that one, so give me the right drugs that make him act like her or make her act like her, or whatever the case may be, right? So I know there's one, right? So that's not a scientific sample, but there's one example. I am confident to say that there are platitudes of those examples out there in the world today, and that, I think, is a big reason for this increase in diagnosis of autism. I think that there are certainly other examples. Yeah. Do I know if I can trust the science, or if I can trust the surveys or the numbers, the statistics behind everything, to say that there is a legitimate statistical increase in cases of autism? I don't know that I can trust that because of this phenomenon, if you want to call it that.
And I will say, and this is not scientific in any way, this is my experience, but what I recall growing up was very few kids my age, younger, older, whatever, that had some kind of developmental issue, whether it was, what we would have called retarded or slow or weird, right? As a kid, you just come up with these terms, right?
Right.
We didn't know what anything was called. There weren't very many kids like that. It was rare when somebody had some issue. And the special needs classes,
they were separated from us. Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is that.
But there were like 3 kids in that class or whatever, And
that's why they had a smaller bus.
There's a lot of kids. There's way more than 3 at our schools that have these developmental issues.
I just thought that was because I moved to Illinois.
It might have had something to do with it. But
growing up in Missouri, we didn't have that shit. But I moved over to Illinois. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck's in the water over here?
It was there. I don't know. I feel like there's more. And that's just my experience. There's no survey that's been done. I'm not showing any evidence of that. I just think there are a lot more kids in our kids' schools that have some kind of developmental issue, and some of them aren't even in the special ed classes. They're in the regular classes, but they're treated like, well, we're going to give him extra time to do this assignment, or why don't you, Tommy, help Jimmy with his work, because he can't do that as well. So there's way more of that now. Am I saying that's because of vaccinations? I don't know. But I think there's an increase in something. There's an increase in developmental issues in kids, I think. And I don't think it's just
there's a strong argument that can
diagnosed.
Be made.
Maybe some of that. But.
Well, yeah. So look, I see the same things that you do. And I think that there are more of those examples in the education system today.
And maybe it's McDonald's. I don't know.
Yeah, shit, it could be. I honestly, I think it's lazy parenting. I think it's that people let the TV parent their child, and they don't read to their kids, and they don't interact with their kids. They don't help them with their homework. They don't talk to them. They let a screen babysit and raise their child, which is that's foolish. And look, there's certain things that our parents and grandparents and great grandparents have been doing that work. And that's called human interaction and being able to learn how to communicate. And I think that's a lot of what we see out there today.
I think that's different. I
don't know.
I think that is an issue that we need to address, but I don't think that's causing the types of problems that we're talking about.
Well, maybe the kid's slow to develop. There's, again, I hate to keep qualifying things. I feel like I overqualify my statements here, but there's certainly severe examples, and those, they're valid, and there's we're not questioning those by any means. But it's the kid that just doesn't pay attention in class, or that is disruptive because he wants to talk, or he wants to color, or he wants to draw dragons, or he wants to do whatever, right? I had that kid in all of my grade school. His name was Dan. And you know what?
Sup, Dan?
He was a really smart person. He was and he was a friend of mine. He was a weird dude, but he was a friend of mine. And I think he dropped out of high school eventually. And his parents allowed it because he just didn't fit into the regimen that the schools wanted to put him in.
I agree with you that I think too many people want to classify everybody the same way.
Yeah.
Different is not good.
We got to label things. Everything today is we got to label something. It's like, you know what? This kid just might be different. Right. And we need to teach him differently. We need to,
and like you said,
her,
even if you had a kid that's diagnosed autistic, whatever, it doesn't mean you need to pump them full of drugs to make them normal, whatever that is. You treat them however you treat somebody, and you help them develop however they're going to develop. You shouldn't try to mold them into.
Right.
Now, if you think honestly there's a way you can prevent something, or not prevent it, but like treat it, and even then, like, I don't know, like maybe you shouldn't try to do that.
I mean, I'll go back to Einstein, Rain Man. Okay. Now, Rain Man didn't have a great impact on society with some, magical formula that, solved relativity, but he was a brilliant mind. It was maybe not brilliant mind, but just a completely intriguing mind. That's a real person, right? That story is based on.
Is it? Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he's a real guy, and he had issues. He had developmental issues, but he was a savant. He was an idiot savant, as they called it in those days, and some would today call that autistic. Most would, I think, call that autistic. So, but legitimately brilliant when it came to certain things.
Sure.
Einstein was slow to develop and awkward and had trouble with social interaction, but brilliant, legitimately brilliant when it came to certain topics, right? We just need to embrace the individuality of every person and not try to solve for what normal is for the sake of normalcy, right? I have 3 sons that are very different, and that's great. That's what I think every parent should want. Why do you want to have 3 of the same fucking thing? I mean, triplets are great, but even those triplets, even if they're genetically, their DNA is identical, they're still going to be different personalities. They're still going to have different feelings and thoughts and dreams and hopes and ambitions and whatnot. We should embrace that, right? If you want everybody to be the same, well then, man, that's some fucking George Orwell shit that we don't want to go down that path. I don't want to go down that path. So, so we've both made arguments for and against drugging the youth or the adults of America. I'll summarize my statements and then I'll let you, close up here. That I think that medicine, doctors should be trusted for the most part. Trust but verify, right?
Right.
And also measure the risk, calculate the risk, calculate the repercussions of what you're doing to solve X, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to solve this problem. What else? What's this going to result in? And I think if you do that, and you do that with a reasonable level of judgment, then what it'll boil down to is that you should go to the doctor, and you should have your regular checkups. And just because the doctor says, well, Jarod, looks like your left breast is swollen, you should probably have that checked out. You can say, no, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm keeping it. Is it going to hurt me if I keep it?
Why do we all have the same size breasts? What is this, Orwellian bullshit?
So, I mean, but that's,
yeah,
that's legitimate, right? So, but if he says, well, I can fix it for you, at the risk of, if I do that, then your right testicle is going to fall off. And you say, I like alrighty a little bit more than my large left breast bothers me. I mean, and that, obviously, those are not realistic and they're extreme, but it's as simple as that.
Yeah. And that plays into my argument on the vaccinations. So, am I saying definitively that I would never give someone a vaccination, or that I know for sure it causes long-term issues? No, I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Did I give my own kids vaccinations? I did, at a time when we were much younger, more naive, and just kind of did what you're supposed to do. That's when we did that. Mm-hmm. Would I do it again today? I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Maybe I would still get kind of pressured into it. But my whole point is, do I think injecting a concoction of chemicals into a developing infant or toddler will have no adverse effects? No, I don't think that. Or do I think that it couldn't? No, I think there's people that get offended, highly pissed off at the notion of suggesting that vaccinating your kid might cause a problem. How dare you think that? How dare you say that? You're putting my kid at risk because you're not vaccinating your kid. Well, how dare you? And I'm like, how the fuck, how dumb are you that you think it might not have a problem?
But those are extreme, and those are, again, we've talked about this when it comes to religion, with politics, whatever. These are extreme, polar opposites, and I think that the majority of, there's what's her name, the actress married to Jim Carrey, that's
McCarthy.
Jenny McCarthy, right? That she's completely against it, right?
Right.
And Jim Carrey's certifiably nuts, right? I mean, I think.
Well,
look at him.
And I don't think they're together annh. She's with one of the Wahlbergs now.
That's right. That's right.
Wahlberg,
and he's
right?
awesome. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll bring her around, but no. She's out there. She is an anti-vaxxer. She is completely against.
She also has an autistic child who thinks that maybe that's the cause of it. So I don't know that she's completely out there and crazy.
But also she's trying to find a scapegoat. It's like someone that developed cancer that live under power lines is saying, well, it must have been the power lines. Or it could have been you smoking 3 packs a day,
Right.
Or it could have been that Jenny led a kind of a wild 20s.
Oh, come on now. You don't know.
And she did some bad blow in 1993 at fucking spring break.
Could be.
It could have been that. Could have been. I don't know. Call me crazy. But but my point is that those are opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right.
So again, I go back to the balanced judgment. So you can't say 100% one way or the other. So you have to figure out what the safe path is.
Yeah.
What the most reasonable, sensible, salient path is forward. And I think that, in my opinion, as of today, that means following, for the most part, the doctor's orders. Not 100%. I haven't. In cases, I've said, nope, not going to do that. Fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly been those examples, but
I just think we've had many examples of things that had long-term side effects that we didn't know about right away. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And And I think it's naive to think that this couldn't possibly be one of those things that has long-term side effects. And you're giving it to an unwilling participant. You're forcing your child to be injected with something that you know is going to have an effect on them.
Mm-hmm.
You think it's going to have this positive effect. You know it's going to have a long-term effect.
I got to ask you another question, and maybe we'll clip this out after I ask this question, because it's personal. You circumcised?
Yes.
Is your son?
Yes.
Why?
It was a discussion. We talked about not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I think there are two reasons. One is religious. Well, there's three. One is religious. One is societal. And one is for health reasons, right? Cleanliness and whatever, right? So
arguments can be made about all three of those.
Right.
So religion,
you're
an atheist.
Care about that.
Right.
And
societal, if he happens to move to Europe,
do you want to seem normal or whatever, right?
But if he happens to move to Europe, if he lives in Italy, for example, or Poland, right?
Right.
He's abnormal,
I guess,
right?
Yeah.
And what was the third one?
Health reasons,
which has been somewhat disproven as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
That just our basic cleanliness of America, of the civilized world today, that it's not a real risk. That we're pretty clean individuals. But in the 1700s,
But it was definitely one of those things that was like when you're young, and by young I mean a young parent, and you don't really know what to do, and this is what everybody has always done as far as you know, and you're like, I guess,
right.
And they say, well, it probably helps with cleanliness, but maybe it doesn't. But if you say, well, it probably does, it's like, I guess I'm going to do that. Yeah. But we've told other people now, I'm not sure I would do that again. We've had other family members
I agree with you there,
who didn't have their sons circumcised.
So, I mean,
it's like,
my thought, and it's selfish. My thought process, and my kids will hear this, and be like, you son of a bitch. That was painful. I remember. God damn it. But that's how I am. That's how they should be. That's the legitimate logic. I mean, there was other, the cleanliness and the.
It seems like
the
a
health
horrible,
reasons.
Mutilating thing that clearly is painful.
Yes.
Just because they don't remember it years later doesn't mean it wasn't horrible at the time. And we vilify other countries and groups for mutilating their kids in other ways.
There's extreme laws against genital mutilation.
The acceptable way
of little girls in third world countries and developed countries.
Right.
But
so
yet,
it probably needs to stop.
But yet it is common practice in the U.S. And I did it to my children. But again, to validate your point earlier is that I was young and naive. I'm like, well, that's what's supposed to happen, right? That's what my mom and dad did to me, and his mom and dad did to him, and so sure, I want him to look like me.
Sorry, son.
Yeah, there's whole factions of people out there of men,
right,
that are trying to reverse the effects of circumcision.
The effects.
Which basically trying to grow foreskin again. Yeah, it's fucked up. But there's folks. Don't Google that.
Yeah.
No, but it's we are not as advanced as we think we are.
Right.
And we like to think we got it all figured out.
Definitely.
But we don't know shit, and I don't think we will for generations. And but I'd like to be here as long as I can to witness the evolution of humanity and to advise my child that I know you are, but don't do it to your son. To all of my grandsons, hopefully dozens of them. No, not dozens. 6, half a dozen. How about half a dozen? 2 each.
So don't get circumcised. Get vaccinated.
Visit your doctor.
Get the finger up the ass.
Yeah.
Smash your tits into a machine. What else can we say that everybody needs to do?
Just be aware.
Subscribe to this podcast.
That's right. And check us out on all the social media stuff at Load This Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. This has been a heavy.
It's really, if you made it this far, we appreciate. And let's bring it all full circle. So with Thanksgiving approaching, we want to say that we're very thankful for our listeners.
That's right.
Our subscribers.
That's right. We're glad you're still here.
Friends and family and strangers
and
alike.
We want to keep you here as long as we
Definitely.
can. So get a finger up your butt.
So the more we can talk about anal invasive procedures, I feel like the more listeners we're going to gain.
Well, it seems like good sound logic, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, we're thankful for our listeners. I'm thankful for family and friends and the ability to hang out on a weeknight and have a podcast.
Right on.
And drink beer.
Yeah.
And
it's good times.
Yeah.
It's good times. We live in a great country, and again, mustache Movember. If you can't grow a mustache, then fair enough, But donate, whatever. Raise awareness. Just tell people like, hey, just be aware. Not necessarily got a finger up your ass, but just be aware and tell the people that you love to like, hey, be aware of your health and make sure to have your stuff checked out. This is a weird ass fucking episode. Is. Again, I don't know how the hell we're going to promote this. I don't know.
Hashtag
finger up your butt. No, it's good times. And I echo what Jarod's saying. We're thankful for everybody. And tell your friends, tell your family, write us, tell us how crazy Jarod is. Tell us how asinine I am, and that I'm an ignorant fuck. My wife does most days, so it's all good. But did I already say the Gmail account? Load this podcast at gmail.com. I don't think I said that already.
I don't think so.
And check us out on YouTube. Get a load of this podcast on YouTube. So, yeah.
And speaking of up the ass, as usual, fuck the Cubs. Until next time, I'm Jarod.
I'm Ryan.
And get a load of this.
It's tested, and there's no reason to...
So, for one thing, and
assume that it's going to affect anything other than your immunity, your immune system.
Why would you think that? Why would you assume it wouldn't affect anything besides the one thing they say it should affect? Yeah, right.
Well, here's the other side of that is that. Ooh, this is a tough topic. So, autism, which is the main argument, right?
Right. When you're talking about vaccinations,
right. I think it's let's just go out on a limb and say that it is.
Right.
We could be wrong, but let's go out on a limb that it is. I purport that the diagnosis of autism is elevated not because of an actual increase in autism. Mm-hmm. It's because of
change in diagnosis,
social norms, the ability for parents to self-diagnose to some point. Also, there is, I think, a higher likelihood of parents that, not by no means am I saying all, but that are trying to explain whether it's misbehavior or a deficiency of some fact. Of some effect. Now there are cases of autism out there,
right,
in the world,
and there's a wide spectrum of what that means. That term is not one thing.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of the problem. Mm-hmm. I think it's one man's opinion, and this one will get emails.
This is gonna be fun.
I don't know. It could be treacherous,
right?
But
I know this is it can be a contentious topic for you, and you're passionate about it or whatever. So I really don't want to offend you, and but I know that I can sound snarky sometimes with my comments. So
yeah, you have a tendency.
So be prepared.
I know you well, so it's okay.
All right.
I'm all right.
We need to start the episode though.
Well, give me your comment first.
Well, okay. So you mentioned
so we could throw down before.
What makes you? I'm going to paraphrase because I remember exactly how you said it, but something like you want me to put something in my kid, a 2-year-old, mm-hmm. without any evidence that he's for sure has this thing or whatever, right?
Yep.
So I will say in the
I'm being a bit of a hypocrite.
You want me to inject this needle full of a concoction of chemicals and drugs into my infant, or I don't know how old you go with vaccinations.
Yeah.
Older than that.
Oh, sure.
2, 3, 4, 5, whatever.
Yeah, up to your teenage years.
Yeah, right.
I mean, now they want you're all the way up to the teens.
Definitely at a young, developing age.
Yeah.
You want me to inject this into my kid without any inclination to think that they're going to get polio or whatever.
How many of we need to start?
I know.
Other than that, or we need to just keep going, and we'll just record the opening at the end of this. But
we could do that.
No, let's kick this off. Let's go.
All right,
let's go. 5, 4.